New updates in the Sean Diddy Combs legal saga. The rap mogul gets an official sentencing date. He gets hit with allegations from a shocking new lawsuit. A juror speaks out, and also, apparently, Diddy receives a standing ovation from inmates.
Diddy completely breaks down in court as the judge delivers a shocking prison sentence following a dramatic and explosive trial verdict. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was intense, almost suffocating. You could feel the tension in every corner. Not a single sound echoed through the room. Every eye was locked on the judge, waiting for the words that would change everything.
Verdict in the Sean Diddy Combs trial, but I'll tell you what, this case, not over. No. Important hearing today, sort of. We got to talk about why. Well, Judge Arun Subramanian had sent a tentative October 3rd sentencing date for Diddy on his convictions of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Remember, that's what he was convicted of. He was acquitted of racketeering conspiracy, and he was acquitted of the 2 sex trafficking counts. But he was convicted of these prostitution charges. And at one point, there was reporting that defense counsel for Sean Combs and prosecutors, they had then agreed to switch the date to September 22nd. And we thought, okay, because today's hearing was supposed to be about expediting the October hearing. Then they agreed to September 22nd. Now apparently it's back to October 3rd. This is all over the place. Very confusing. We'll get it straightened out. I gotta say it's interesting because Combs' defense counsel had originally stated last week, when it was the October 3rd date, that they wanted that sentencing expedited, meaning they wanted it to happen sooner. And one of the things that Sean Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, had said was, quote, the mother of some of his children had passed away many years ago. These kids, the 2 daughters here sitting in the middle of Your Honor's second row, don't have a parent. Obviously referring to the death of Kim Porter in 2018, mother of Christian, Jesse, Delilah, Quincy. And by the way, remember Sean Combs was denied bail, so it wasn't even like he got to go home after the verdict. But clearly they wanted this expedited. They want his sentencing to happen as quickly as possible. They want him out of jail. They want him out of prison as soon as possible. And also it's interesting because prosecutors, they need time for the pre-sentencing investigation and report. Basically, that's when a probation officer interviews the defendant, looks at the history, the background, childhood, education, employment, criminal history, finances, the mental and physical health of the defendant. There are interviews that are conducted with family and friends. The officer looks at various court and school records, employment records, financial records. The officer could speak to the victims in the case, law enforcement that were involved in the investigation, provide all of this information in a report to the judge, because here the judge is going to have a lot of discretion when it comes to the sentence. What could a sentence look like? Well, prosecutors indicated in a filing that before even doing a pre-sentencing investigation, Combs is looking at 51 to 63 months, a little over 4 to 5 years in prison. The defense seems to be pushing for 21 to 27 months, so a little over 1.5 to 2 years. But remember, Combs has been sitting in federal lockup since September at the MDC. So if he gets time served, he really wouldn't be spending that much time behind bars. Now, of course, they're the extremes. When you talk about transportation to engage in prostitution, the maximum for each count is 10 years in prison. You stack them together, you get 20 years. Okay, based upon the facts in this case, it seems highly unlikely he would get that much. Other side, you get the idea. There's no minimum for this charge. So could he get time served and walk free? Also seems unlikely, in that you're dealing with multiple instances of transporting Jane and Cassie, the 2 victims in this case, and men across state lines for the purposes of sex work. You could say this is an aggravating factor why I don't think he's just going to get time served.
The man now holding Diddy's fate in his hands stood ready to deliver the final decision. After weeks filled with controversy, shocking testimonies, and a trial that dominated headlines across the entertainment world, the defining moment had finally arrived. And the second the gavel struck, it echoed like a moment the entire world would remember. Diddy was sentenced to prison on the spot. In that instant, the music mogul, the businessman, the global icon completely unraveled. This was no longer the confident and untouchable figure people had always seen. This wasn't the same man who once dominated charts, packed arenas, and hosted unforgettable parties. This was someone breaking under the full weight of justice. The verdict had already shaken him deeply, but the sentence itself cut even deeper. Witnesses inside the courtroom say Diddy's expression changed the moment the judge began speaking. His legal team had been hoping for some form of relief, probation, house arrest, anything but prison. But the judge had no intention of going easy. This court cannot overlook the pattern of behavior presented, the judge stated firmly. This is not about a single incident. This is not about one mistake.
You might be saying, Jesse, wait a second, he was denied bail at every turn. And you would be right, he was. Despite proposing extensive bail conditions during the course of this legal saga, including a $50 million bail package and monitoring by private security personnel, the court was not convinced. Now, by law, the defense has the burden to prove that Combs is not a flight risk or danger to the community. And given the charges, the allegations, including that he was improperly trying to contact people in the case pre-trial, he was always denied release. But then there's what happened after the verdict last week. And this is an interesting conversation. And again, we're going to be speaking with Ira Jettleson in a minute, who's been working with Diddy's team on possibly getting him released. But after the verdict, the defense applied for Combs to be released from detention pending sentencing. But that request was again denied by Judge Arun Subramanian. The defense argued, look, he's no longer charged with RICO, there's no longer presumption of detention, we have his passport, there's no access to private planes, there's no criminal history, this is his first conviction, he would be a fool to mess any of this up because he was just given his life back by the jury, he wasn't convicted of the highest charges, he was facing up to life in prison, now he's not. He should be allowed to return to his property, his mansion in Florida. There'll be a $1 million bond. Now, the government argued, look, Sean Combs, he was convicted of serious charges, Mann Act violations. There was physical abuse in this case. There was prolific use and distribution of drugs. He committed crimes while under investigation, including having drugs in his hotel room when he planned to surrender to federal authorities back in September of 2024. And Judge Arun Subramanian denied the bail application, sided with the government, that these convictions on these charges, by law, they trigger the mandatory detention statute, that the defense conceded Combs is violent. They conceded that at trial, quote, we own the domestic violence. That's what the defense had said. The judge also made the point that it was impossible for the defense to demonstrate that he poses no danger, particularly given his violence after the searches of his properties and when he knew he was under investigation. That's the whole Violent Jane episode, attacking Jane, one of the victims in this case. And also that the evidence at trial showed there was a years-long pattern of abuse and violence. But despite the judge denying Combs' release once again, and given that his sentencing has officially been confirmed for October 3rd, that was agreed by both the defense and the prosecution yesterday, could he get out beforehand? It's an interesting question. Let me bring in right now a special guest. I am joined by one of the most renowned bail bondsmen, probably in the country, definitely in New York, Ira Jettleson. Ira, thank you so much for coming here on Sidebar, and pleasure to meet you.
You too, Jess. Pleasure myself.
Let's talk a little bit about what you do. Talk about what you do. I don't know if everybody completely understands the process and your role in it.
You know, it's funny. Not a lot of people understand the world of bail. They think that a bondsman just raises his hand and you know, that's where it ends. With me, it starts with the people that you meet, the lawyers, the judges, the DAs, hearing about a bail, putting it together, which could take days, weeks, as in this case that we're talking about right now, Puffy. I started on this case going back almost 7 months ago when they brought me in as a consultant, because federal bail and state bail are two different things. State bail was what most of the bails that I write. Federal bail, they don't need a bondsman. They do go through pretrial services. But a lot of times major attorneys will bring me in to consult because they'll be denied and they'll say, hey, what do we do? So in this case, with Puffy, I got brought in and we talked about possibly renting out his plane and keeping it in Honolulu. We talked about surrendering his...
This is about years of actions, years where silence was maintained through fear and influence, and a complete lack of accountability. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The sentence was announced clearly. More than a decade behind bars. The entire courtroom reacted instantly. Gasps filled the air. Diddy lowered his head into his hands. His lawyer sat frozen, unable to react. His family members, present in the courtroom, were visibly shaken and emotional. But it was Diddy's reaction that captured all the attention. He stood up, visibly shaking, before dropping back into his seat, completely overwhelmed. The man once seen as untouchable had finally reached a point he couldn't escape. Outside the courthouse, chaos quickly followed. Media rushed for updates. Protesters gathered in large numbers. Some supporters broke down in tears, while critics openly celebrated. And across the industry, everything seemed to pause. 50 Cent, who had been openly critical of Diddy from the beginning, reacted almost instantly on social media. "The empire's down, and this is just the start," he wrote. Within minutes, the post spread everywhere. His words reflected what many were beginning to believe. This case was bigger than just Diddy. It pointed toward a culture that had ignored the truth for far too long.
Denied at the very beginning of the case, one after another after another. This judge, and it's the same judge who's going to sentence him, denied that over and over again. And you and I, again, in another conversation we had on your show, we both said he is screwed now, that he's got no chance because he's violating the rules of the court while in jail. So if he's disobeying the rules of the jail and the directive of the court while he's in custody, how can you be expected to actually follow the terms of a bail agreement when he's out of custody?
Right.
And I think that chicken is coming home to roost again. I mean, I think that's what happened yesterday afternoon. That any judge who has a criminal defendant who behaves like that is an affront to the court itself. It's disrespectful to the court, and it's almost like he couldn't get out of his own way there at the beginning. But he had an excellent defense team.
He does. So assuming for a moment, whenever the sentencing hearing happens, right? Let's say it happens in a month from now. Let's say it has October 3rd. The question is, what's his sentence? As we mentioned, the prosecution in a filing from yesterday talked about the guidelines range being 51 to 63 months. Now, this is before a pre-sentencing investigation and report. Now, the defense, right, they want 21 months. He's already served almost 10. Talk to us about what you're thinking here, because there is no minimum. The maximum's 10. If the judge were to combine it together, like you said, 20 years, feels highly unlikely that would happen. As we're talking, what is a pre-sentencing report investigation? How would it affect this? What do you think the judge is going to do? There's so many different factors to consider here, and it's not like a murder case when it's like, okay, we know what's going to happen. It's like life in prison without the possibility of parole. It's a given. There's room here. What do you think the judge is going to do?
So in federal court, this is actually very interesting. They rely very heavily on those pre-sentencing investigations. So essentially what will happen is there'll be a federal probation officer, and they do these for almost every case, where they will do their own investigation, where they'll talk to family members, they'll talk to employers, they'll talk to neighbors, and they will make a recommendation to the court as to suitability for release, suitability for time. And that's something that federal judges traditionally really adhere to. They tend to put a lot of weight on those, far more than they do in state court. The probation department can make a recommendation, but the DA will certainly have more ability, most of the time, to talk a judge in or out of a sentencing recommendation from the probation department. Federal court is different. They really put a lot of weight on those. So that's something that I think is going to be very interesting. And a lot of that will come down to what the individuals involved in that investigation, even though it shouldn't impact their professional recommendation. It's really, I think we're going to see what they thought of the case. You know, did they think he got away with something horrific here? Did they think that he was getting railroaded from the beginning? I think that may reflect in the recommendation to the court. But of course, we don't know what that is yet. I don't know. If I'm his defense lawyer, I don't know if I am pressing the gas on that, trying to make this thing go faster. I mean, it's coming up soon enough anyway. I would want to give them the time and not press them, because you don't want a probation officer or anybody in the federal system to feel like they're being rushed.
Right.
Because I think it's very easy to just go, okay, screw it, the guy should stay in.
The prosecution made the point yesterday. They said the point, like, we're not ready to give a really sentencing recommendation. We haven't gotten the report. You know, there's people say, well, maybe he'll get time served, right? You know, he's been locked up. There's other people say, no, the judge is going to throw the book at him. Even though the judge said yesterday, even though I'm denying him bail and I'm looking at certain conditions, this is not reflective or a preview of what my sentencing recommendation or what my sentence will be. But, are we looking at double digits? Are we looking, you think, at 1 to 5 years time served? I know it's so impossible to ask, but it is a very specific charges he was convicted of.
Yeah, we're not looking at double digits.
Okay.
I cannot imagine the court imposing that. And remember, because this law is so old, and we're in an age of Uber.
As more behind-the-scenes details begin to surface, the situation appears even more serious. The prosecution didn't just build their case on isolated claims, but on an entire lifestyle. A lifestyle shaped by influence, power, and the silencing of voices. And the judge made one thing very clear: that way of living had reached its end. Diddy's defense team fought hard, highlighting his charitable work, business success, and his role in elevating culture and opening doors for artists. But none of that could outweigh the evidence presented. The court remained firm. This verdict and sentencing have sent shockwaves across Hollywood, the music industry, and beyond. You can have wealth, fame, and powerful connections, but when the truth finally comes out, it has the power to destroy everything. As Diddy was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, cameras captured a very different image of the man once considered untouchable. No sunglasses, no entourage, just a broken figure walking toward an uncertain future. Behind him, his empire is slowly collapsing. Brands are stepping away. Business partners are distancing themselves. His music, once everywhere, is quietly being removed. The silence now speaks louder than his success ever did. Sources reveal that several artists are reconsidering their connections to his brand, with some even exploring legal options to separate themselves completely. And as everything continues to fall apart, the impact keeps spreading. This trial, the verdict, and now the sentence have opened the door to even more revelations. New accusations are emerging. More legal actions are being prepared. And more names are starting to surface. While Diddy's story is currently at the center, this is far from over. The culture is changing. Silence is being broken. And a system often accused of protecting power has finally shown accountability. This sentencing was not just punishment, it was a message. And that message is clear. No one stands above the law. As Diddy prepares for what comes next, not in luxury but behind prison walls, the industry he helped build is being forced to reflect. How many more secrets remain hidden? How many more powerful figures are involved? And when will the next one fall? One thing is certain: the era of unchecked power is coming to an end. This verdict wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of something much bigger. So stay ready, because this story is only getting started. And it didn't end there. Once the cameras stopped rolling, new reports began to surface from individuals who had once been part of Diddy's inner circle. Former assistants, managers, and close collaborators began sharing anonymous accounts with major outlets. They described an environment driven by fear, control, and silence that had kept the truth hidden for years. Some even claimed they had signed strict NDAs that still made them afraid to speak openly. But now, with the conviction and sentencing complete, that fear is beginning to fade. And with it, more revelations are emerging. Additional lawsuits are already being prepared. Investigative journalists are digging deeper into past deals, partnerships, and private events. And what they're uncovering is raising even more questions. One of the most shocking claims to surface after the verdict involves alleged surveillance across Diddy's properties. Sources suggest that multiple locations were equipped with hidden cameras and advanced recording systems, not just for safety, but possibly for control. Guests, associates, and even personal connections were reportedly recorded without consent. If proven true, this could lead to an entirely new level of legal consequences far beyond the original case. It paints the picture of someone not acting randomly, but with calculated intent. Now, with the sentence delivered and new investigations unfolding, pressure continues to build. His legal team is preparing for what could come next. Authorities are reportedly reviewing all available evidence for potential additional violations. Meanwhile, inside prison, reality is beginning to set in. The lifestyle of luxury is gone, replaced by strict routines and confinement. Sources indicate that Diddy is struggling to adapt mentally and emotionally. And it's no surprise. In a matter of moments, everything changed. From global icon to inmate. And the public is watching closely. Social media is filled with reactions, some grieving, some angry, and others calling it long overdue accountability. But above everything else, one word continues to stand out. Accountability. People demanded it. And now, they're finally seeing it happen. This is no longer just about one person. It's about a shift in power, a change in culture, and a message that influence can no longer hide the truth. The rules are changing. And as industries prepare for what comes next, one thing remains clear. This is not the end. It's the beginning. More stories will come forward. More truths will be revealed. And more voices will finally be heard. A new era has begun, and no level of fame can stop it. Diddy's sentence may have started it, but the real impact is only just beginning.